Listen up, City Manager Unfiltered podcast listeners, because I have a special risk-free offer that you can't get anywhere else. I have negotiated this exclusively for you from kudo.ai. That's kudo.ai. You can make your council and school board meetings more accessible with kudo.ai, the AI-powered speech translator designed for local governments. Kudo AI is a patented language accessibility solution that offers real-time, continuous speech translation in 45 plus languages. It ensures that every community member can engage equally during council meetings and public hearings, no matter what language they speak. With closed captions available for those requiring assistive listening technology, live speech translation can create truly inclusive and representative communication between citizens and policymakers. Start your free 1-month trial of kudo.ai today to see how language accessibility can transform your community. To take advantage of this exclusive risk-free offer, go to kudo.ai/CMU. That's kudo, kudo.ai/CMU. I've tried it myself. You're not going to believe how accurate it is. There's no app to download. There's no account to register for. All your users have to do is type in a URL into their smartphone browser or scan the QR code, and that's it. Easy peasy. Go to kudo.ai/CMU to get your free 1-month trial today. You won't regret it. All right. I'm Joe Turner, and this is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast, a podcast for city managers and other public sector executives. It is the most influential local government podcast in the United States, and I'm excited to continue my conversation with Todd Hopwood. Hey, Todd, we went through our first interview, and I really enjoyed it, and I was editing it, and it dawned on me, holy crap, why didn't I ask you about these specific 10 questions and how you calculate your score and all that? And so I wanted to bring you back on the podcast today to unpack that a little bit for the audience. But before we do that, why don't you just quickly reintroduce yourself to the audience and let people know a little bit more about you?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I'm a department head at City of Wollongong Council in Australia. So we're a council that's just south of Sydney in New South Wales. I'm a department head of customer and business integrity. So it's mainly corporate services, type functions, procurement, legal, fraud, internal audit, ethics. But importantly, I look after the Office of the General Manager and the Office of the Lord Mayor, which we talked about having Lord Mayors.
That's right.
Last time. So that political side of council as well, I look after. So I've been in local government 6 years, worked in 6 different cities, big and small, in Australia.
And you've been on this mental health journey now for a while. You've racked up close to 50,000 LinkedIn followers. That's your primary platform that you use. You've built an amazing audience. And how long would you say you've been doing this mental health journey as an advocate?
About 6 years. So sort of on LinkedIn about 3 or 4 years actively, and about 6 years as a advocacy piece in workplaces and that sort of thing.
Excellent. I know we kind of talked about the origins of that journey in the first episode, so we won't repeat it here. But like I said, we went through that episode, Todd, and I felt like a complete fool because afterwards I'm like, well, why didn't we talk about the 10 questions that you ask yourself on a daily basis? And so I reached out to you. You sent me an actual screenshot of your whiteboard. And obviously I can't show it to the listeners, but it's heavily used. It's one of those whiteboards where it's got some stained Expo ink on it or whatnot after all the wiping down and erasing and whatnot. But I kind of wanted to go through the questions that you had on that board. And I think what we'll do is I'll just read off the 10 questions as you gave them to me in the image, and then we can unpack them each one by one. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay, so here's your board. It reads at the top, it says, my mental form is X out of 10. How are you today? And then it says the top 10 questions. 1, how motivated am I today? Number 2, what are my perceived energy levels? Number 3, are simple tasks easy or difficult? 4, how well have I slept lately? Number 5, how's my physical health today? Number 6, how purposeful do I feel? Number 7, how connected am I to family and friends? Number 8, how has my diet been lately? Number 9, how are my stress levels? And number 10, how easy or difficult is decision making for me today? Okay. And then you have a ranking scale for all 10. And I'm just going to quickly go through that since we're here. It says, what do these scores mean? 10 out of 10 means all time, lifetime peak form, means you're just crushing it, right?
Yep.
9 out of 10 would be exceptional form. 8 out of 10 would be very good form. 7 out of 10 is decent form. 6 out of 10 is average form. 5 out of 10 is low mood. 4 out of 10 is very low mood. 3 out of 10 is extremely low mood. And then we get into the struggle zone, really struggling. 2 out of 10, I'm struggling and need help. 1 out of 10 would be crisis, please reach out to me. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, Todd. But
It certainly is. Yep.
before we go through each one of those questions, where again do these questions come from and who created these questions and whatnot?
Like we said last time, I came across this concept about 6 years ago, and it comes from a company named FormScore in London, England. And they've developed into doing an app on this. So I was trying to explore how to be more open and how to assess my own mental health, and came across this concept. And Rob Stevenson, who runs that company, had these questions, and I was in contact with him talking about it. You can see from the whiteboard, it's not a conventional whiteboard, it's a narrow column in my wall, and there's whiteboard on a column. So they weren't Rob's original questions. They're amended to fit across in a very narrow column. So I took Rob's original questions and then made them the exact same topics, but condensed down to fit into the narrow format. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. So these questions are not the original questions. These have been amended slightly by you, correct?
Yep. Just to fit in
Okay.
because of that spacing, because I wanted them to fit on this concept I had in my wall. Obviously, we can't see it on screen, but I have a structural column in my office, and so there's whiteboard paint around the four sides of the column just to make use of it. So, yeah,
Have those 10 questions been static or have they evolved or been swapped in and out with other ones over time as you've been doing this?
I've kept them the same. I know Rob has evolved his in terms of the product, and they've got shorter and more punchier. I've kept them the same because my interpretation of them changes, but they're just a trigger point for me to think about a topic, which we can go through in a minute. So I don't literally read it word for word, so need those changes. But how I view the questions and how I do it certainly has changed
Okay.
over 6 years. How I do the score, and for a period I was doing it on an app, because there's apps out there. Rob has one for the form score on an app. I mean, a few co-workers joined me, but then we dropped back out of doing that. Like the digital element didn't work for me. Doing it as we spoke about last time. Me trying to be open for other people was my purpose for doing it, because I was too closed off. So doing it on digital apps, to me was like I'm going back to where I shouldn't be, where just I'm only thinking about emotions and not disclosing them.
Right, because as we talked about in the very first episode last week that I put out there, Radical Mental Health Transparency, your board is publicly available for anybody who walks in your office to see. It's not hidden. It's not just a personal guide. This is actually you putting yourself out there for the rest of your coworkers to see, correct?
Yes, and I've got a 6-person meeting table in my office, out a big office, and that looks straight at it. So if anyone comes in for a meeting, they can glance and see that first up before they talk to
Yeah.
me. So yeah, yeah.
Okay, so before we get into the actual questions and whatnot and what have you, I'm kind of curious because these are not really yes or no answers, right? So it's not like you read all 10 questions and you say yes equals 1 point, no equals 0 point, or anything like that. So how do you calculate your score on a daily basis?
So I originally tried to approach it that way in terms of, and you can try and think of it like, if am I motivated? You could do a yes, no, have your own subjective approach to it to go, because each of them are a different type of topic: motivation, sleep, health, and did you have a good day yesterday, a good day today on that topic? You could approach it like that, and that's where I think it's important, if people do things like this, it's got to work for you, because it's got to be a genuine assessment. So I started out in that mode, not necessarily doing each one individually and adding them up and getting a 6, but literally sitting and asking myself, all right, how motivated am I today? And if we go through each question individually, I can go through how I did that. But it's evolved over time. For the last couple of years, I walk in the office and I've got a feel, because I've done that many, over 6 years, was that a couple of thousand times I've done it. I know I feel like a 4 today, and just it's pretty intuitive. The last year or two, it feels like a 4, up it goes, and that. But at the start, yeah,
Exactly right, because you're so in tune with yourself at this point, right? Okay, so
yep,
let's walk us through if you're a rookie kind of doing this, how would you approach this, right? So maybe the best approach is just to break it down by going to the questions individually, and you can talk about that.
yep. So the way I approach it, so each of the questions, when you have a look at them, really are a building block. If you're firing on all cylinders, that's like, the 10 out of 10. And I probably should flag at work, I've never written up a 10 out of 10 yet. I don't know if that's because you shouldn't be. 9 out of 10 is the best I'll do at work. If you're 10 out of 10, you're on a beach somewhere. Or So I haven't written a 10 out of 10 on, even when I'm on a super flying day at work, I've only ever put a 9. I'm just leaving it there for, I don't know what. Winning the lotto and walking out, maybe that's the 10.
That's right.
But what they are is each of those elements are a part of 10 things that if you were doing well or 90% well on those 10 things, you're going to be doing great at work, at home, your mental health, everything will be firing. So the key part for me is taking the keyword in each one. So like in that first one, how motivated is about motivation, and looking at it in the sense that it's a prompt to go, you could be going along at work and then you're avoiding a task and all that. That can be a sign that you're not firing. You people might be delaying things, or you might procrastinate on something. That can be a trigger that there's something going along inside that you haven't acknowledged and reflected yourself. So when I look at the motivation question, I sort of I look at it from, am I avoiding stuff? Am I just getting into my day and doing what I always do, or am I slightly different, or was it a punish to get to work today? Or and that's an important part for a lot of people. If the early warning signs of depression are difficulty in getting yourself up to do a task or get to work and that sort of thing. So that can be there as a hint a long time before you realize you're depressed. So, and it could be a reflection where you go, actually, for the last week or so, I've been avoiding these tasks, or I haven't been doing this, or I haven't ran or exercised, or whatever your thing is. It's a reflection point to go, actually, I haven't been doing something, and then go, why aren't I doing
Right.
that? Or why don't I want to do this particular thing? So that one's is sort of a really important one. That's why I put it at the top, was to go, all right, it's the bellwether of, is there something else wrong that might be in a lower question? But yeah, if you're
Yeah.
not motivated, something's not right. It doesn't give you the answer in that question, but it's a sign that, yeah, you need to have a little bit of a reflection or some time and space, or do some exercise, or whatever your well-being trick is. It's the bellwether question to me that something's not right.
Okay. So what does an individual do? Because it's worded, how motivated am I today? So is that individual who's listening, who wants to implement this scoring system, would they score that on a 1 out of 10?
They could do it like that in the sense of, is there any, am I motivated to do all the things that are on my to-do list today and all that sort of thing? I'm ready to go. There's no impediments to me going ahead mentally. You could give yourself that, all right, tick, that's a yes, because you certainly can approach this as a yes, no. It's going to be a 50-50 threshold. It's not perfect, but you're more motivated than undermotivated compared to normal.
Do you think that a person who's doing this for the first time, who's just trying to get into this approach, they should turn it into sort of a binary sort of question and turn it into a yes or no? And just for simplicity's sake, is that the best approach, you think?
I think to start, it is, particularly if, in the workplace, if you're a numbers person, black and white detail, all that sort of thing, and you're trying to expand out into this space. And it can be difficult when you're first looking internally and reflecting on the signs. That can be a sign that you're not going well, because the idea is to pick up on things before you're at crisis point,
Right.
or your anxiety's kicking in, or whatever it is. It's to give you the clues that it's coming. And where most of us are bad at picking up clues, or we probably pick them up but we ignore them, so they're there, but if we consciously look and sit at them. So doing it in a binary sense, and you go, right, 6 of my 10 categories aren't that great, you could give yourself that 4 out of 10, and you look down, you go low mood. You might not associate that with mood, because it hasn't brought you down as depressed yet, but you go, I've got some warning signs that it could lead to that. That's where the end scores, they're all linked to mood, because it's a mental health score, but it may not be impacting your mental health yet, but it'll be impacting somewhere. All those bad, not habits, but you're not firing on all cylinders, could damage your mental health down the track. So if it's a low score, doing a binary, it's a warning. All right, what can I do to fill the cup back up in one of those
Right.
areas?
The reason I'm kind of asking these questions is, if you're doing this for the first time, maybe you've never really been sort of introspective and kind of put yourself out there
Yep.
like that, you don't really know. You maybe don't really know how to grade yourself in these along the continuum of a 1 to 10, right? I mean, a
Yep.
yes or no is
Yep.
a simplistic sort of kind of gets you to where you need to be
Yep.
to get started, right? To keep it
Yep.
simple. And then, like you said, if you are saying, hey, I'm going to take all 10 questions, turn them into a binary scoring scale, right? But at the end of the day, you think that the scale, the number is not truly reflecting where you're at, then that's where you need to start going to start doing some a little bit more fine tuning, right, into those different
Yep.
categories to get to get a score that you feel is more reflective of where you truly are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And through all the questions, it's probably worth, if you're taking the binary approach, to go, if things were normal, it was an average day, I'm not unhealthy, I'm not depressed, not anxious, it's not perfect. What would my day normally look like? How fast would I work on tasks? Would I exercise? Would I talk to family? Would I connect? Would I go to the bar after work, or would I miss it? It's just that standard average day, comparing it to that standard day on each topic, and then seeing if you're up above that definition or below it in motivation, because everyone has different motivation. So it's a comparative, if you take that approach, comparison to what your normal is, that can give you that tip to whether that's a yes, I'm going good, I'd give myself a point for that, or I'm under where I think I normally am. So that's why it's not good to define it as everyone would have the same answer for motivation, or the same for energy, or
Right.
connection with friends. If you're a person who likes their alone time, that question of how connected to family and friends will be done very differently than someone who's a social butterfly and
Right.
out every night and they don't feel
Absolutely.
like going out. That's easy for them to go, I'm not connected. So comparing it to your ideal norm, not your ideal perfection, is the way to do it. And then you could go above the line, below the line, to give yourself a point or not. And that would be a good way to approach it in a binary sense.
I'm tracking you. Okay. Let's talk about question number 2. What are my perceived energy levels? Obviously, energy levels is the key there.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, energy. And the purpose around that question is that is a significant, both a predictor and sign of mental health challenges. People in very deep depression often don't even have the energy to get out of bed. So that's a continuum, but it's it's a good sign, early sign physically, of everything's working well or not well. And again, it's energy to do what you need to do. So if you've come to work, you're doing all your tasks, you're hitting your projects, but 4 days in a row, you're a gym person and you've skipped going to the gym in the morning, I'd be reflecting back on that and go, maybe my energy levels aren't right. Why am I skipping the gym?
So that's an interesting. I want to bring this up here because going to the gym can be a reflection of your energy level in terms of your mental health, right?
Yep.
But it could also just be a physical health thing, right?
Yep.
So if you're just feeling under the weather, or maybe you had a soccer game last night with some buddies, or and
Yep.
you're pretty worn down the next day, do you got to factor in are you trying to factor in that just on the aggregate, just no matter how you feel, or is it truly just based off the mental health component? Because like I said, if you're feeling under the weather, physically ill, that's going to have an impact on your energy, but it's not really impacting your mental state, right?
I take it as a whole concept, not just the mental health aspect,
Okay.
because everything's interconnected in life, and your physical can impact your mental health, and your mental health can impact your energy. So in terms of energy, if I'd been, I used to be a runner, so if I'd done a marathon on the Monday, I'm not going anywhere near a gym or doing anything. Your energy is going to be down. I would mark that down as lacking
Got you.
energy. So
Okay.
it's not critical of yourself as a mental health. That's where I talk about with the scores, even though I say average mood, low mood, it's more mood's probably not the right answer down there. It's not necessarily all about mood. It's just, as a physically, mentally firing human being, you're a bit lower on your
I'm
scale.
tracking you. I'm
Yeah.
tracking, but I think that's an important distinction for somebody who's never done this
Yep.
before to understand that, hey, this is not just simply a mental health assessment in terms of how you're feeling in that category. It's a how do you feel right now, physically, mentally,
Literally,
everything
as the
about that.
question
Yeah,
say, yep,
right.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
okay, good deal. Okay. What about question number 3?
A simple task, easy or difficult? I sort of look at that one, not just simple tasks. It's just, yeah, that's a real big one. That's back to, am I just avoiding something today? That's a good sign for me. I'm a super busy person. I've got lots on my plate. I'm a toxic over answer of yes when people throw extra projects and all that stuff. We'll keep taking it. But sometimes I've got to be careful that I'm not taking that and still not doing something that's meant to be already on my list. I could be giving myself an excuse not to do a particular project or a task, and that could be at work or at home. But that can be a sign that you're avoiding something, or there's something underneath that. It could be anxiety about a project, or there could be a speaking piece, or you've got to present in it, so you're avoiding something. So that's why I thought it's not just simple tasks, but you're not an assessment that you may not be working. You could be doing lots of work, but is there something you should be doing and it just keeps drifting along? And there's
Yeah.
some reason you're not doing that thing you should be doing. Or it could be as simple as you're not ringing mum. You got to ring mum, and you're not ringing her wise because you haven't been there for 2 weeks and you're going to cop a where have you been type thing. So it can be subjective and on different things, but you are avoiding it for a reason. It's usually something internal stressing you that you may not know about. So that's the lens to look at.
Kind of like how when I was in school and my room was always the cleanest around the time that I had to do a term paper or study for a final or something. Is that,
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, because you're busy, and in one part of your brain you've justified not doing the other thing because
Right.
look at the room. But that can be a clue because all these are aimed at trying to spot something before it becomes into a big problem. So a
Yeah.
warning sign is if there's certain part of things that you should be doing or you regularly do or you're normally okay doing, and you look backwards and go, actually, that thing's been on my to-do list for 10 days and I just keep leaving it there. It may not
Okay.
be
Yeah.
important. It could just be prioritizing. We go, is it you that's keeping it there, or is it work or demand? So it's sort of looking at that. What's keeping those things undone? Is it you or is it circumstance?
Here's a big one, I think, especially for men who are getting older, like me, is how well have I slept lately? Number 4.
I always score poorly on this. I'm a
I can't get. I
terrible
can't get a good
sleeper.
night's sleep. I think for the last, I mean, it feels like the last 10 years, I can't get a good night's sleep. It's just frustrating.
And like this one was obviously sleep was a topic on Rob's question, so I put it in there. But if this was binary, and I do say compare it to normal, but I don't sleep much. I had a period in the last couple of months where I woke up at 3:30 in the morning every day for like 3 months straight and couldn't get back
That's
to
not good.
sleep, and just constantly, but and not anxious, not ruminating, just literally waking up and go okay, and then I can't sit idle, so then I'd go and do something, and then I know all the research by then going activating my brain. I've then turned on my circadian rhythms, and the body will keep waking you up at 3:30, so it's self-defeating. So I've got out of that the last couple of weeks, but I had to actively go, all right, when I wake up at 3:30, I've got to sit there and lay there and just actively try go back to sleep and all that because your sleep patterns are really, we're trying to understand sleep. We don't know much about it, but you can have a lot of influence over your sleep. It is a factor that is probably the best telltale sign of something's not right in your body or brain. You're either overworked, not eating properly. It's a real barometer on that sense. It doesn't tell you what the thing is that's causing it. That's a harder piece. It could be a problem. If people can't sleep regularly, all the advice is go to your doctor because it could be physical. There could be literally something
Yes.
that's preventing you, and then it has all the impacts. We've all had those days where you trudge in the office and lack of sleep, and that's a tough day. And if that keeps going, then that can have a significant impact. But there's mountains of research about the connection between sleep and negative mental health outcomes. Both poor mental health can lead to poor sleep, or poor sleep can lead
Right.
to mental health outcomes. So that's probably the easiest question to answer for most people because you can look at last night or your pattern or you're trudging in because people with young children or anything like that can wake you up, and just there's lots of things that can disrupt your sleep pattern. So that's an easy answer on that one, but often the hardest problem to solve in terms of how to
Yeah.
get that good sleep. That's easy to answer, hard to solve, that one.
Yeah, and I would encourage all the, especially the men who are listening, that if you are having getting reports from your partner that you're snoring and what have you, go get a sleep study done. I had a sleep study done a couple of years ago. Maybe it's been 2 years now or a year and a half.
Yeah.
So I'm on the CPAP machine and everything like that, so I can breathe and not have disruptive sleep. My wife said it sounded like I was dying or getting killed in my sleep on a nightly basis, and she couldn't stand it. You can have some really serious health consequences because you're not getting oxygen to your brain, and obviously it's impacting your sleep. So especially all those men out there. I'm not sure how much women snore, but I know it's obviously an epidemic with men. But if you're having issues with snoring, there's a good chance that you're not getting good oxygen and it's going to impact your sleep quality. So do yourself a favor and get that sleep study done. It's not too bad.
I need to go and do that. And you said about men avoiding, and we're in a similar age bracket.
Yeah.
I've been, because I do snore, my tactic's been to sleep on my belly because I don't snore on my belly. So, but that doesn't stop the fact that there was a problem there. So
Yeah, no, I would
so
highly encourage you to do it.
I need to do that. Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, question number 5: how's my physical health today? Which again is related a little bit to 4, obviously.
Yep. And I think it's the area you just went into. That is there something going on physically? We may not know a diagnosis, but we know there's things there. You could be getting twinges or tingling in different parts of the body, or you could if you sit up too quick from a desk, you get dizzy, and if that happens regularly, there's something there. So in this sense, we often know, especially as we get older, we can often put it down to old age or creaks, or I just got up too quick. But those things can also be a sign of something physically wrong. So this probably is not an indicator of your current mental health today, but obviously physical health can lead to poor mental health outcomes later. But it's genuinely, you just need to check out, be in the
Yeah.
best health you can. Your body will give you so many warning signs. Occasionally we do have health outcomes that happen just out of nowhere, but often there's a little warning sign in each area from your body trying to flag that something's not working properly.
It's interesting when we have these discussions about mental health because a lot of people will compare mental health to physical health and say, if you're sick or physically sick or you break an arm, no one says anything, no one looks at you weird. But if you have a mental
Yep.
health issue, there's obviously that stigma, right? But
Yep.
the other thing too is I think it's so easy for us to take our health for granted, even if we're in decent health or above average health. But there is that connection because I mean, there's so many people out there who run into some sort of health issues, whether it's the migraine headaches, where they got back injuries or things like that. And obviously, that could lead to addictions of some kind,
Yep.
but it could just negatively impact your mental state, right? Like, I've known people who have serious back injuries, and it's just like, forgive me, but it's like they say, man, sometimes I just want to put a gun in my head because the pain's so excruciating. So there's no question that poor physical health can have an impact on your mental health without question. And I don't think that we as human beings fully appreciate, understand, or cognizant of that until it's kind of too late.
Oh, that's definitely true. And pain obviously can lead to very significant poor mental health outcomes. But
Absolutely.
the connection I see between physical health is, to me, one of the biggest risk factors for having poor mental health outcomes for yourself is when you can't, when your perception of what you are, what you do, what defines you changes. So if you're an active person and then you get a back injury and you can't do things, or you can't work around the house, you can have self worth issues. I've known people have had back injuries and they can't do any work around the home and all that. And there might be guilt they're not helping their partner, or they can't play with their kids. There's lots of things that can come from the physical, and that could be an injury or health related. You might need surgery. We're defined by how we think, what we do in our own self image. And if we can't do those things, and that can happen with men a lot in a sense in self image, when we leave the workplace and you retire, you hear about a lot of people pass away soon after retirement because we defined
Yes.
ourselves, and there's no research on that I know of the connection between the mental health part of that, but how we define ourselves and self-image is super important in terms of our mental
Well,
health, and any physical impact can change how you can deliver who you are, and so it can have real ramifications for you.
that is so true, Todd. And that literally, and I don't think you're planning this, but that literally leads right into question 6, which is how purposeful do I feel, right? Because oftentimes when men retire, they lose that sense of purpose or that mission, right? They don't have that mission
Yep.
statement, and they kind of wither
Yep.
away.
Yeah, that question is, when I first started doing this process, I didn't really connect with his question. In all honesty, I sort of bounced over it. I didn't understand it myself. As I've progressed on this journey using both this concept and learning and advocating more about mental health, that connection with purpose that we just talked about is so critical to that. And one of the techniques when I speak to people is, if you go to someone, you say, tell me about yourself. If they start with job, or I do this, that's a risk factor, like particularly job. Tell me a little bit about yourself, and they go straight to job. Or, I'm a city manager, I do this. If that's genuinely how they define themselves, then that's a risk factor when they leave that. And it could just, not through termination, they may just retire. That sense of purpose and self is such a big driver to motivation, to the other things, the energy levels, sleep, all sorts of things can come from that core connection of purpose with what you do. So, on a real positive sense, people being connected with their work is really good. And as leaders, we try and get people connected in that sense of purpose. But the sense of purpose has got to be their purpose connects to work. Their purpose can't be work.
Yeah,
If that makes sense. So it's looking at that, because a disconnection between you and your purpose will lead to, you know,
mental health
dissatisfaction
issues.
and poor
Yeah.
things like that. So it's a chance. Like I said, the first couple of years I didn't connect well with that question. Now it's one of the most important: is am I aligned with what fills my cup mentally? What makes me feel better? Doing a task over here really gives me energy, gives me all these things. So it affects me on a mental health sense. So that's, to me, now one of the more important questions. But as we talked about earlier, that's that connection, getting familiar with the process and familiar with looking internally. That was certainly, to me, not possible in the first year or two. It's just I didn't understand it. I didn't connect with my purpose, and I didn't connect purpose to my health or mental health, even though I had purposes and things I tried to do. Yeah.
Well, that's a real gut check question, right? If someone asks you, "Hey, tell me about yourself," or you're meeting somebody for the first time, and then you catch yourself saying, "Hey," the first thing you identify with is my occupation, right?
Yeah.
That could be two things. One could be that's where you're truly wrapped up in, and that's your identity, which has a pause for concern, as you just
Yeah.
alluded to. The other thing is just could be a de facto lazy answer because you don't really think too much about it. But I think that's a good barometer to do an assessment. Like, hey, if you're identifying yourself as who you are, as the first thing that comes to mind is your occupation, right?
Yeah.
Then you need to be probably paying special attention to that aspect of your life and purpose, and making the proper adjustments or modifications that you need to make as you get closer and closer to retirement, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be problematic.
Yeah. And I've been in a workshop a couple of months ago where, you've got to do that whole introduction stuff, and some people dread all that in workplace workshops. It's the second worst thing, other than we're going to do role play. To me, that's the worst thing on earth. But the facilitator said, I'm going to go around the room and everyone's got 20 seconds to say who you are, but you can't use your title or what you do in work. You've got to talk about you.
That presents a lot of
And
challenges for people.
some people stammered and were like, and literally you could see the difficulty in saying who they are without using, work as a thing. The reason he did that, he brought that back to say, and people said, oh, I'm a father of two children, I've got four cats, and did all that sort of stuff. And the idea was that's your purpose. Work allows you to deliver that purpose. Still be connected, or often people had environmental causes and that sort of thing, and their work allowed them to deliver that, or civic pride and all that. But he used that workshop. It wasn't about this topic. It was just a general workplace topic, but
Yeah.
used that as to connect people with understanding purpose before we went through and worked on the topics we were working on. But that's difficult in terms of, like I said, if you've got the barriers up, like we talked about last time, and don't self-reflect, it's super hard sometimes to reflect on your inner purpose, not your work purpose, even though they can be aligned.
What would you say to those who maybe say, I don't even know what my purpose is. I just feel kind of blah. I don't really feel like I even have a purpose in life right now. I mean, hopefully there's not a lot of people listening to this podcast who are going through something like that. But I know a lot of people go through some tough times where like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing on this earth. Like I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
If you were to have a friend or somebody come up to you and you're talking about, hey, what's your level of purposeness, or how purposeful do you feel, or whatever, how would you counsel somebody who's sort of in that blah state? How do you find purpose?
The first thing I'd say is around that question around purpose in general, you don't have to have a purpose. That's not, if that's not how you tick, that's okay. Where there's problems is if you have a purpose and you're misaligned with it, and you're not traveling through life in accordance with how you see the world and that sort of thing. That's where the issue comes. That's where damage comes, and frustration and anxiety. But if you didn't have a purpose, yes, it's good to go and get that, because that can give you motivation and energy. But if you're in a spot where you don't have a purpose, and just either getting through life and doing the basics is the bare minimum all you want to do, or you want to be that classic hippie style and just literally just flow with the breeze and all that, if that's how you want to approach life, that's perfectly fine. Or if you're not in a spate to actually do that sort of forward planning, that's all right too. To me, it's the issue around, are you misaligned more than having to have a purpose, having to have goals? Like if I look back on my early life, like obviously I've got a passion and a purpose now with mental health, but some of those periods for quite a few years post, coming out of university and what I've been doing the last 5 or 6 years, other than family, not saying that's not a purpose, I would have struggled, even looking back now, to go, I had a purpose. If someone wanted that classic, what drove you and all that, it was family
Gotcha.
and not much else. So to me, it's not critical to have that. It's not critical to have goals. It's not critical if you're going for a tough patch that I need to get better tomorrow or 6 weeks or whatever. It's just do what you need to do today, make yourself safe, get through your day, and that stuff will come if it's right and it feels right. You can move into that. It's more urgent and pertinent if you have purpose and you can't deliver on it, or life's taking you away from it. That's where it's more urgent and critical to look at it.
Gotcha. So number 7, how connected am I to family and friends? That seems like a pretty straightforward one. Is it straightforward?
It is, and to me, it started out as my most important question. And as we talked about last time, I started doing this because
You said that this started out as your most important question, or it is
yep,
your most important question?
started out
Okay.
100% because, as I said when we spoke last time, my reason for doing this was putting barriers up and not showing emotion. So I took that connection as genuine, wholesome connection, your whole self with those around you. So me having barriers up, not talking about anything that's going on, not talking about emotions, I took that interpretation as a not connected. So my purpose for doing this for the first time 6 years ago was to improve those connections, be more open with people. So this was the key number one question. It was the most important to me at that time, if any single one was, because that's was my purpose. So I look at that question about, have I got the barriers down? Looking backwards the last week or so, have I just been doing the I'm fine routine, even though I was trying to stop doing that and it's still instinct? Have I been pushing through and going, all right, yeah, I will have the conversation when someone checks on me? So I still have that, as we talked about last time, that instinct, even after 6 years, to go, I'm fine, don't want to talk about it.
Right.
So I judge myself on that. Have I actually circled back or continued to have the conversation despite my instinct of not wanting to have the conversation? And that's still my driver of doing this score and this concept personally, is to make sure I continue to keep it front of mind, to have those connections there, and those who are close to me, let them in, let them help, show my
Right.
raw emotion so they know that I'm connecting with them.
And we talked about this, Todd, in the first episode, the first interview that we did, about how this whole process is really designed to protect yourself and create safeguards or guardrails for you on your mental health, because you're putting yourself out there in such a manner as to sort of solicit support and feedback from those around you when you're going through tough times, right? And the idea is
Yep,
that helps insulate you or protects you from hitting rock bottom. I would think that's what,
yep.
right? Yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
the whole idea. And as I said last time, my natural instinct is to, like a lot of people, go in the cave at that point, not reach out to that support. So that's where being open is that helping me fight the natural instinct. So people come around and support you. So it could be luck, it could be this process. I haven't been below I think the photo I sent you was a 4. I kept a photo of that one. I haven't been
Yep.
below a 4 in the last 5 6 years that I've put on the board, which is, it's a very low mood, so it's not fantastic. But whether that's just having a good run or the support and the fact that people come in when I'm at a 6 or 5 or 4 is keeping me above that. Not sure, but I certainly get that support prompted from this at work, and then I'm working hard at home to be open so I can get those support conversations from my wife. Because if you don't disclose what's going on, you don't get the support. If you don't say you're
Right.
struggling with something, so I still clam up sometimes. So I'll openly talk and seek support, but then other times the walls go up and I've got to try and concentrate and turn them down if I recognise it. But if I don't recognise it, my wife might call me on it, and I've got to work hard to, all right, open up about a topic.
Well, that's a question I wanted to kind of lead into is, we live in a time now where it's very easy to disconnect. We can be present, but not present, right? We have
Yep.
either by virtue literally of our jobs, where we can say, hey, our jobs are very busy. They take us out. We're thinking about pretty important stuff, right? It's easy to sort of use that as an excuse, legitimately or illegitimately, because a lot of the
Yep.
listeners on this podcast are doing really important things. But it's also very easy to use as an excuse. It's very easy to just to be disconnected because we have all these devices, our phones, our laptops, our tablets. Everything's easy for to distract, notifications and what have you.
Yep.
Do you have any quick recommendations or tips for somebody who might be listening to the podcast and say, you know what, if I'm being really honest with myself right now, I haven't been as connected to my spouse, my children, my loved ones, my family, my friends as I would like to be. What are a
Yep.
couple of quick, easy things an individual can do to be conscious and be present?
They're probably two different topics. There's some quick ones, but they're not always easy.
Okay.
There's one I'm trying to do at the moment is that technology addiction type thing and checking the phone and the
Right.
notification. So you can put it on your phone. You can have it in different phone setups, are different things like night setups, no notification periods, or that sort of thing. Or you might turn off an app. You can't use the internet between 8 at night or and 6 in the morning and that sort of thing. So I've put that on as an attempt to not do that because for two reasons: to have that connectivity that you're talking about and not sit on the couch and just be half listening and
Right.
scrolling at the same time. But
We've all been
also,
there.
there's so much research about screens being bad before bed, and we're talking about sleep and sleep patterns of checking the phone and scrolling through. So, in two aspects, trying to do that, you can set it up so that your phone won't give you notifications and you can't use an app between a certain hours. I'm struggling with that now because it gives you the option to ignore and proceed. And so I ignore and proceed. So that's why I said it's quick, but it's not easy. So I'm working on that. One thing I would love to do, but I've talked about it if I've done a talk on mental health, is have a zone for your bedtime, whatever your bedtime is, at least half an hour of no screen time. It's so good for your sleep health. But
I'm so
I've never done
terrible.
it.
Oh,
Never done it for a single day. I just horrible at that. But there's so much research that is so good for your sleep and your patterns, and then it helps break that connection of then picking up the phone the first thing when you get up in the morning. I think the worst thing that ever happened is having it as an alarm. Yep.
oh my
Yep.
gosh, yeah. One of my biggest curses, and I don't know why I do this. I've never learned, and I'm to all the listeners out there who have been victimized by me on this whole front because I've had quite a few. Is I have such a horrible habit of looking at text messages and stuff and notifications the first thing I wake up, and then I
Yep.
forgot I looked at them in the first thing in the morning, and then the whole day gets by me, and I forget to get back to them because I'm intending to
Because it's
get
too
back
early
to
to
them.
get back. Yep. I
Yeah,
do the exact same thing. I think people should. I've bought one, but I haven't turned it on yet. Get rid of the phone, put it away, like on your
the old school alarm
nightstand that's
clock.
away, and get an alarm clock because my phone's my alarm clock. So you touch it to turn the
Yes,
alarm off, and that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to touch the phone, but you literally do it for the alarm. So the very first thing you do in your life is touch the phone
I
when
know,
that's not what we should be
100%.
doing. So that's why I said there's some easy things. Are not they're quick things, but they're not easy. So that breaking that connection with technology is good for family and friends connections, but that probably is the most common one in modern life. But as you said, I overfill my cup too much. So work long hours, I'm on boards, I do charity work, I study uni at night. That all takes away. And some of us, that's just built into our DNA. But we need to check, is that built into our DNA? Because when we were young, filling our time helped us avoid those things. It helps
Yes, yeah.
us avoid talking about mental health or reflecting on ourselves. Or if you're sitting, you're quiet, you might be alone with yourself and you don't like what goes in your head at the time. So you just go super busy. And some of us get really good at that over 30 years. And it becomes part of what makes you the best city manager or the best department head because you can just thrive and do
Right.
many things. But what's behind the scenes? Why are you doing it? And as we get older in life, the idea would be, hopefully, is that we can reflect on how do we keep that productivity at work, but get that connection back at home. We don't have to skip time and connection at home. It doesn't take connection doesn't take a whole lot of time. It's just genuine
Yes, yeah.
connection to scheduling. So my wife and I walk pretty much every morning. 90% of the time, we'll walk for 60, 90 minutes in the morning together and just talk about stuff. It can often be work and problems and that, but that time is
But
literally
you're present.
always together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There needs to be more. I do too many things and I'll sit and scroll while we're watching TV. And so there's a lot more I could do to expand that time out. But having those built in things and yeah, trying to get
Yeah.
that less screen time would be good for anyone.
Now let's go to a number 8, and then this is always very terrible for me. How has my diet been lately? Obviously, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think we all know our diets are
That's
probably
the
not
easy
as good as they
one.
should
Yep.
be. Yeah, yeah.
For me, the most important question is have you, it's because there's no question there, but have you actually taken a genuine break? Like separate from the eating, like you may go outside and get a burger or a hot dog, but going outside helps. If you're just skipping lunch, working through because you've missed the break, you've missed 20 minutes out in the sunshine and in natural
Yeah.
air, and then on the way home get greasy takeaway, take
So
out
many
food on the
people
way
work.
home.
So many
Yeah.
people work through lunch and skip lunch. I think that's even more of a female thing. I mean, I've known so many women who just don't
Yep.
eat lunch because they're so working, and I just like that's just I couldn't function without getting food in my belly.
To me, getting outside for 20 minutes, walking around, plus having a meal that's away from your desk is super critical. So the diet question's super easy. We all know if we're doing the right things or not in terms of that thing. But I add
Right.
in that layer of, am I taking the break to eat,
Get
making
away.
it a, yeah,
Get some
yeah,
separation, right? Yeah,
yep,
yeah.
definitely.
I'm actually really good about that personally, but
That's
getting
good.
away. I like to get out of the office to go eat and just get away from City Hall when I was a city manager. So
Yep.
okay, so number 9, how are my stress levels? Again, this seems pretty straightforward. At least it sounds like on paper.
Yeah, on the surface, yeah, and it's just a lens. Like if you know whatever your thing is that you do when you're stressed, it might be you might skip exercise, or you might look and go a bit snappy at home, a bit
Yeah,
short,
how am I
or
responding? Right?
I'm
Yeah.
yelling at the dog for looking at me sideways. Whatever the thing is, just to reflect back and go, oh, yeah, that's less than ideal how I responded in that. That could be a sign that stress isn't working well, because sometimes others can pick up we're a bit stressed before we do. So if we think of it that lens, how did I react, or how's my interactions with other people going? That can be a trigger that, oh, maybe there's something under the surface I'm not looking at
Right.
or I'm not aware of. Yeah.
What about number 10? How easy or difficult is decision making for me today? That seems to be kind of related to number 3, which is our simple task easy or difficult.
Yeah, so it sort of doubles around on that. It's the other sort of other lens of that of, some people will skip the simple tasks and go on to things, but other things that may genuinely be decision making may be hard. So you might be normally confident in that sense, but you find yourself questioning and you're going, to your colleagues or to your superior just to double check things, and that's not your normal approach. That's the sort of lens I take, because I'm quite strong at decision making, but if I suddenly find myself questioning myself, it could be, I don't know, the topic at work, or it could be, all right, why am I questioning myself? Why am I losing confidence? That can be yeah,
But again, this is all related to you what your normal baseline is,
yeah,
right? So
your own baseline. Yep,
if you normally collaborate and seek out
yep.
assistance with decision making, then you're still doing that. That's fine. It's just if you're
Are you
not,
varied from what you do? Yeah,
exactly what your normal baseline is. Correct,
yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah,
Okay, so those are the 10 questions, Todd, right? And I'm kind of curious, when you first started doing this, did you ever keep track of like your daily results and do almost like a moving average of sorts? Or did you just sort of wipe the slate clean every day and start fresh? Or did you track your
yeah.
long-term sort of trend?
At first, it was just on the board, and I didn't track it at all. And then, as I said, Form Score, Rob's company has an app, and they still have the app. I used that for a while and did the tracking. I went away from that because it didn't work for me, in the sense that I started to look at the trends, and if we were on a downward trend, I was sort of like, well, that doesn't mean I'm going to have a worse day tomorrow. It's going to continue. So I thought I didn't want it to become that. Just the way my mind ticks, I'm quite into graphs and trends and all that sort of stuff, that you can break a trend at any time. So just for me, I didn't like that, in the sense of I didn't want the trend to become a foregone conclusion. I end up being worse because I've
Or a
then thought about
self-fulfilling
I'm on a
prophecy, right?
downhill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
got you.
everyone thinks about those things differently. So I tried it for a while, and it's certainly worth doing. And there's apps, there's plenty of apps out there where you can track, and then you can graph and see how you're going overall. But yeah, I started that and then drifted back away from it, because, all right, the way I was motivating myself was to use the score, and then, all right, what can I do today to change that score? So I shifted over time to make it very day specific. So if I got a 4, I change the score sometimes during the day. All right, what can I do to,
I was actually going to ask you about that, Todd, because your mood's not static, right? It can
no,
change. I mean,
I've got up in a meeting with my team and changed the score in the middle of a meeting,
really?
because we talk about it sometimes. Some of my longer term team members, they love the fact when I'm a 6 out of 10, because what's that's average form. My One of my managers that reports to me goes, 6 is ideal, because Todd's just frustrated enough but not compliant that if something's not working, he'll go and argue with the bosses and get it changed. If he's a 7, he's too happy. He'll go, oh, it's all right, just accept it and move on. If he's a 5, he's too depressed to fight. But 6 is ideal. So one of my staff, in a joking way, because 6 is a good score, says, "Oh, you're a
Yeah,
6. I'll bring the problems to you today."
that's hilarious.
But it's a sign they're watching my behaviour as opposed to my score. They're watching what that means and how I interact. So it's funny in one sense, but it also shows that they are assessing my mood as well at the same time.
But it's also promoting that environment where, hey, we can talk about these things and it's okay. There's not,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That's it's getting rid of that stigma. That's the whole point of
yeah,
the score. The primary purpose of the score was for you to be in tune with your own mental health,
yep,
obviously. But
yep,
you putting it out there in public, the second purpose of that is to obviously get rid of the stigma, make it not a taboo topic,
yep,
and support and encourage others to be open as well as they feel comfortable.
yep,
So it's great that you have a team that can play along with you on that. I mean, obviously it's not a taboo topic, obviously. You know what I
no,
mean? No one's looking over their shoulder if they're going to offend somebody or whatnot because
yep,
they say something. It's like you've created this
yeah,
really friendly environment that is conducive to not only helping the organization succeed, but helping the individuals within the organization be their best selves.
yeah. So from a city manager perspective, yeah, the fact that my team go, we think the city manager's wrong. Todd, well, wait till Todd's a six, and then we'll go and tell him and see if he goes fight for fight.
Well, in all
If
seriousness,
my
though,
boss listens in, he doesn't know that topic, so he might ask me when I turn up with problems. Are you a 6 out of 10 today? Yeah, we're here for a fight.
yeah, if your city manager has a 4 on the board, you probably don't want to go in asking for a raise that day, right? Maybe.
You might be lucky to come out with a job.
Here's a question. We'll kind of wrap up on this a little bit because I'm kind of curious about your take on this aspect of it, Todd. This whole thing is essentially a self-assessment.
Yep.
So the natural, I think, question I have for you is sometimes we aren't always good at doing our own self-assessments, right? Like everyone thinks that they're better than average or the case might be, right? So where does an external sort of check and bounce come into play on this whole equation? Because sometimes maybe you're not really assessing yourself properly.
That's definitely valid. And what's made me think about that in the last day, my direct supervisor at work, which would be a deputy city manager in America, she listened to the podcast. She knows that I do the mental score, but she goes, "Oh, you still do the I'm fine when you're not fine." So I'm going to knuckle down on that. So that external accountability, because I do this, I think I do the score properly, but I still do that. Yeah, I'm fine. So
Yeah,
she's listening
yeah,
and going, "All right, the double question is going to come, is going to circle round." And I shouldn't have told her this, but what I suggest to people, and I haven't told her before, is if you see these 10 type of questions, and either you're doing it yourself or not for yourself, when you ask people how they're going, it's super easy to go, "I'm fine," and put a barrier up. So
of
I often
course.
encourage people, ask again, but more importantly, you could ask one of these questions. Oh, yeah, how are you going? I'm all good. How's your sleep going? People don't tend to put the barriers up. They're not expecting the question. They might go, "Oh, it's ratchet. I'm,
Right.
I can't get any sleep." But asking a question on those topics, even if you don't do it for yourself, probably not the real work related ones. They might think, if you're a boss, am I motivated? And then, but how's your diet? How's your sleep going? Can give a doorway to that conversation. Yeah.
So Todd, what's the name of the woman you directly report to? What's her name?
Renee Campbell.
So if Renee Campbell, next time she says, "Hey, how you doing?" and you go, "Oh, I'm fine, Renee," she'll be like,
I
"Hold on a
expected nothing.
second. Let me go walk into your office and see what the board says."
Come in.
Right?
Okay, go. We'll go through them one by one.
Oh, that's the hazards of having a podcast or being a guest on a podcast.
I won't send her the link for the second episode.
Oh, hey Todd, I really appreciate you coming on the program to talk about this subject of mental health because it is a tough topic to talk about still. Obviously, I still have difficulty talking about it. It's not something I fully resonate with, but you've really created an environment that allows for constructive conversations in a way that's not threatening or puts you in a self-conscious sort of frame of mind and so I really appreciate that. And I think the first episode was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I've gotten great feedback so far on it. And I think this will be another solid follow up to that conversation. And so what I'll do is I'll put the list of the 10 questions in the show notes and I'll do a link to the form score if you want to give that
Yep.
to me or send that over. Thank you again for being on the program. I'll give you any final words.
No, I think you put the two episodes together, and I've been doing this for 6 years. That point you brought up, we just got to be honest with ourselves. And I'm getting really good at that, but I still struggle with the honest with others. That, yeah, fine
Yeah.
answer when I know I'm not. I'm not lacking this. Previously, I would have lacked the self reflection. I would have actually thought I was fine. I know I'm not now, but that instinct is still there. So it's a continual journey, and And it's also important for us when we talk to others, just do that follow wraparound question, a different type of question, because not to probe at people, but instinctively we'll all say, I'm fine. But if we can just
Yeah,
chat to people and just give them a gateway to go, how's your sleep? How you eating? How's your exercise? You've been getting out, doing your running. If you know someone's a runner, or just
right.
use one of those topics to open up a different question that's not easy to put the barriers up. That'd be my sort of main takeaway for people.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating that human beings are human beings. So it's like you can be honest with yourself and put your score on the board and have it out there for the whole world to see. If everyone just wants to walk in your office, they can see it. But still, out in the hall while you're passing somebody and they ask you, you still have a tendency to say, "Oh, I'm fine." If you're not, right?
Yeah,
And it's just that's just human beings. The reality is that's something for all of us to think about as leaders in organizations, because maybe we need to ban that phrase, "I'm fine." That's just
yeah.
such a what does that even mean, right?
Doesn't
I
even
mean,
mean it doesn't
honestly,
tell you anything. Yeah,
maybe we just need to ban that phrase. You could tell your subordinates, if I hear you say I'm fine, then that's going to be my invitation to start asking some follow-up questions. So if you really don't want me to start digging in, you need to give me a
throw me a
better answer
bone.
than I'm fine. Yeah, exactly. Right. So, well, hey, Todd, it's been great having you on the program. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed these conversations, and I truly believe that the listeners are going to get value from this conversation. So thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.
I'm Joe Turner. This is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast, a podcast for city managers and other public sector executives. It is the most influential local government podcast in America. If you enjoyed the program, please make sure you hit that follow, subscribe button on your platform of choice. And please also leave a rating and review on your platform of choice when you have a moment. I'd appreciate it. Catch you next week.